That's very
Got to be 3 o'clock somewhere.
Greenland, I think, Greenland.
Or is that the timer?
That's the time.
9 o'clock.
That's the time.
Yeah, that always
Nobody's
does
on
it.
the clock?
Not yet, not yet, sir.
Okay.
We never put the chair on the clock.
Good. Thank you. Well, hello and welcome to everyone. Our new member, Mr. Burr, has excused himself. My first order of business. He'll be back, I'm sure. I'd like to call a meeting to order and ask everyone to stand for a moment of reflection and a pledge to the flag, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody has their agenda. We will proceed and follow the agenda most of the time. But the first thing I want to do is introduce our newest member, Ed Burr, and welcome him to our board. Ed, nice to have you with us. Looking forward to serving with you, and I think everybody's excited about you joining us on the board.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I'm glad to be here, and sorry I wasn't able to be at the last meeting.
Well, it's my pleasure to tell you why you were out. We elected you vice chairman.
Chairman, I will not miss another meeting.
That's the way to learn, isn't it?
I hope everybody's doing well today. And while it looks like we might have a short meeting, you never know. But I'd like to get started with the agenda and go through the items that we have in front of us. Item D, and the welcome, we need to adopt the agenda. Can I have a motion and a second for adopting the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll have our safety briefing at this time.
Mr. Chairman, we start every meeting at JEA with a safety briefing, and that is utility-wide. Safety is first and foremost in all of the activities we do. So we are on the 8th floor, and in the event of an emergency, we will all not panic, stand up, push our chairs in, and smartly walk to the exit, which is to the left of the elevators as we came in. We will go down and come out on the plaza level and go across the street and meet at the First Baptist playground area. And I will be the last out. I'm going to elect Mr. Hobson to be the leader and Mr. Ross to call 911, and I'll call security and be the last one out of the room. We have CPR in terms of registered. One CPR. In case there's an event there, we also do have the defibrillators downstairs. Security will bring up in the event of a need of that. Phones on silent or off. Restrooms are out to the right. And that's our safety.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. I'd like to remind everyone to please turn their cell phones off.
I'm not going to perform like I did last time.
Lois is not part of the program this morning.
Nope.
I told her later that we couldn't have timed that any more perfect to make my point.
It's part of our
I
act.
appreciate your help.
We'll orchestrate it.
Yeah, right.
At this time, we want to ask if we have any comments from the public. If you haven't signed the card, we've got some cards over here at the desk, but we have one. Carney Oliver? Cornell? Mr. Oliver, would you come up and welcome us? Stand at the end of the table there, or be seated, whatever your pleasure.
All right.
Please give us your name and address, Mr. Cornell. Mr. Oliver, excuse me.
Okay, my name is Carnell. The address is on file. I know that y'all pretty much familiar with the climate change. I know that y'all pretty much are prepared for the climate change, but one of the things I want to make very clear to you is that a state cap and trade is on your way. Y'all are not pretty much regulated by the PSC board, but you are an independent board, which means you have your own authority to set your own criteria. One of the things I want to make clear to you as an organization is that we can diversify our energy portfolio by establishing certain criteria for minority businesses to help just allow a little seed money to get them trained for solar panel installations. Like there's some of the existing contracts that you have with some of the minority businesses. I've seen one businessman right there in the Reebok area go from 1 pickup truck to 8 pickup trucks just by from what JEA has been able to establish with him. You have helped his minority business grow. So I want to see if there's any type of way that JEA can really be on the forefront, not in the back end, because there's a culture of being for the Jacksonville for being more passive than aggressive. You already know Captain Trade is coming down the pipeline. So it's about time we start seeing that in the front, not in the back. Not be reactive, but be proactive. So basically what I'm saying is that let's see if we can find those minority contractors who can do the work as far as solar panel installation for residential and for commercial property, helping them diversify their business portfolio in which how they do business within the JEA independent board. That's just important to me. I want to see small businesses grow a little bit more and help them do what they need to do, because I do see what's coming down the pipeline. I pay attention. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. I would like to introduce a couple of guests we have. I don't see Councilman Gulliford. I don't think he's here yet. Honorable Bill Gulliford is
He has
not with.
has a committee hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And from the office of the mayor's liaison to the JEA, Dr. Gaffney. Dr. Gaffney? Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a whole lot to report other than the mayor wanted everyone to know that he enjoyed his trip, very thorough with the group, the CEO, and the chairman, and a few other board members that went to New York. It was very successful, and he's excited about great things that's going to be coming in the future. So he just wanted to make sure that I convey that to the public. You all know, Mr. Chairman, that he really enjoyed himself. And that's about it. We got a lot of exciting things that's going to be happening. We got a new board member. You all probably aware, if you're not, for the public, you know, Attorney Howard. So tremendous reputation, very great background. He's going to be a big asset to this organization in the city of Jacksonville. So I'm very excited and elevated, but so is the mayor, more importantly. I read this gentleman's credentials. I think you all saw them there. This is exactly what we need. So once again, thank you very much, and that's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Gaffney. Anybody have any questions or comments? It's also my pleasure to introduce and welcome the General Counsel of the City of Jacksonville, Jason Gabriel. Jason, nice to have you with us, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We need to approve the consent agenda, or if you have some items on there you want to pull and not approve and discuss, we can do that as well. Anybody
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're on B1. Monica Whiting, please proceed.
Very good. Good afternoon. Okay, this afternoon I'm going to give a follow-up presentation to the information we started with last month, where we talked about customer engagement and how we use the voice of the customer to earn customer loyalty. Let's see if I can do the technology right today. So you'll recall last month we shared on this slide of the process that we use is really understanding the voice of the customer, getting information from our customers, to then develop our strategies, our plans, implement, drive the efficiency, continue to measure, get more input, and start the whole cycle over and over. Last month I really focused on J.D. Power as one of our sources of information for the voice of the customer. And I think subsequent to that, there was some dialogue about potential other ways that we can get the voice of the customer. And so that's really what I'm going to share with you today. So we actually have well over a dozen different ways that we are formally and informally constantly taking input from our customers. It's a little hard to see on the slide, but the JD Power is one way that we talked about. But then you'll see that we use focus groups, we use quantitative research, our frontline employees, as well as they get information from our customers, surveys, we monitor our calls, we do transactional surveys after follow-ups. In the last 2.5 years, we have made over 60 process and policy improvements from these different sources, some big, some small. Some examples from our JD Power surveys, and I'm going to talk about this a little more. We learned a lot about communicating with our customers and what our customers want to be communicated about and how to be more effective in that. We also learned through that data that we had a lot of opportunity in how we communicated with customers during outages or service interruptions. So that became a lot of our focus in our work. We launched a new page on our website specifically focused for outage communication and information, and we're really excited about that, and we have more coming. We also get letters and emails from customers, and I wanted to highlight that in saying we do not dismiss the individual comments that we receive from customers, and we've made many improvements because when we look in those situations, we find our improvement opportunities and say, this really made sense. Maybe this call flow on our IVR isn't as easy as it can be for the customer, or maybe we should provide notifications to customers in this situation that we don't today. And so that is another means that we have had a lot of success. And then I think the 2 Cents Group is another area that has been talked about. This is a group that was formed in 2009. It really is an online panel of our customers. We've got a little over 2,000 customers that participate. This is a way we get what I would call qualitative data and information. We tend to focus a lot from an online perspective because they are an online group. They were very instrumental in helping us redesign our website. Our website several years back, I think, was described as clunky, not very user-friendly, and we really used input from this group to help us redesign it, and we're continuing in that journey. It has become one of the nation's top-rated utility websites, and we really credit the 2 Cents Group for a lot of their help with that. And then likewise, graphs on our bills. It was something JEA didn't used to offer. That was something that we got feedback from the 2 Cents Group, and we have today. I'm not going to go through each of the areas, but again, just to share examples in the sense of we could probably come up with half a dozen to a dozen examples of improvements that we've made from every single category of our voice of the customer. And again, some are small, some are very significant changes. In addition to when we look at our voice of the customer, we really view that as an ongoing dialogue and an ongoing relationship with our customer. And probably one of our greater lessons that we've learned over the last several years and that is continuing to grow is the importance of our relationship and our direct communication back with our customers. And so our focus in how we communicate and how we educate is we're really trying to have a mix of reach and frequency, so reaching as many customers as we can through as many channels as we can frequently with key messages, but also recognizing there are some topics and some customers that prefer more in-depth information, so we may have efforts that have high touch points, a lot of content, and that really have a strong impact, those one-on-one connections with customers. In the end, we're trying to bring all of that together to be cost effective. We do have a goal of keeping our overall cost per contact at less than 2 cents, which we have been able to accomplish over the last several years, which is also why when we get ideas and suggestions for different types of communications or advertising, we do tend to do an analysis on our reach, our frequency, our impact opportunity, because we're always looking at that overall portfolio. And we will test different things, and we'll stop doing it if we don't find it to be effective. Another item that we really keep an eye on is what are our customers' perception of the amount of communication that they're getting from us. At the end of 2015, 91% of our customers felt they were getting just about the right amount of communication, with about 3% thinking there was too much, and about 5% saying not enough. In our Wave 1 results, which is really only a quarter of the year, you can see the number for 16 declined a little bit, where customers are really saying, no, we'd like to see a little more communication. So we've been monitoring that. We'll look at that. In our analysis, what we found is we had pulled back a little bit on our online communication in the first wave, and we did see an impact on that. So we continue to adjust and assess that, but work to have the right amount of communication. Equally important to the amount of communication is what we communicate. And this is a question, again, that we get a lot. We rely on the voice of the customer to tell us what they want to hear from us. In a nutshell, customers want to know what impacts their bill, what impacts how they do business with us, their services, different programs they can participate in, how to make life easier for them. Certainly outage information. They want a lot of communications about that proactively and reactively. And something that is really unique to the industry that you don't see in the airline industry, banking industry, that J.D. Power talks about is in the utility industry, customers want to know how the utilities are giving back to and serving in the community and being a corporate citizen. It's for planning for the future. It's about safety. It's about the environment. It's about volunteering and being present and being a good corporate citizen. And then finally, you'll see we do a mix of communication channels. Again, trying to get the reach and the frequency, recognizing that different customers want to be communicated with differently and different channels work for them. What we're really seeing grow is that whole digital and social media segment. Right now, between our website and all the social media and digital media, it's over 28 million touch points in a year. It's also a very cost-effective tool or approach for us, and I believe we're going to see that growing more and more. Right now, about 70% of all of our customer transactions are occurring through our website or through our automated phone system in a self-service fashion. So with that, that was just some additional information from the conversation we started last month, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Monica? Well done. Thank you. Now, Angie Hires, you'll give us a presentation on the St. Johns River Power Park. Angie, welcome.
Mr. Chairman and Board of Directors, in your packet, you should have an agenda item summary of the St. Johns River Power Park System Employees Retirement Plan Reinstatement of Plan document. This was presented for information to you and review in consideration of an action moving forward in January. As a frame of reference, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the St. Johns River Power Park and what that organization is. St. Johns River Power Park is jointly owned by FP&L and JEA. It has approximately 220 employees. About 1,500 of those employees are covered under the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 1618, and about 67 of those employees are managerial employees. Back in 1984, a particular plan was established for them for retirement. It was a tax-qualified plan under the IRS. That plan currently has about $139 million in assets, and it is 98% funded, which is where you want to be with a pension plan, almost fully funded. Back in 2013, in February, that was for you, Mr. Gulliford.
Those top places.
Back in February of 2013, that particular plan went through some major redesign. The plan was restructured where it had 3 different tiers. That first tier, and it was a little bit based upon years of service as well as age. That first tier was basically those people who would remain in the traditional defined benefit plan with the backdrop still in place. The second tier was a defined traditional benefit plan with no backdrop attached. And then that third tier was a frozen defined benefit plan and the cash balance piece added. And then after February 25th, 2013, any people that would come into that pension plan would then be in the cash balance plan. Also, along the way, there were other amendments that were made that were pretty much technical in nature. And those particular amendments are just basically compliance and regulatory rules that you get from the IRS, and you're pretty much mandated to make those amendments. Some of the other amendments that were made to the plan were basically due to negotiations, because pension is a bargainable object as it relates to our bargaining units. And at the table, most recently, we had some articles that were bargained. One of the things that was a result of bargaining is that we actually connected military time to service time under that agreement, as well as there was a change to the contribution level. When you have amendments that are made in a plan over a period of time, it's often advisable and recommended that you go back and restate the plan. You restate that plan so that you can incorporate all of the changes that have been made to that plan, all of the amendments that have gone to the board previously to be approved, put those all in one document, have that approved, and then you submit that to the IRS to have them issue a letter of determination, which in turns continues to have your plan ruled as a tax-qualified deferred plan. So the information that was presented to you in your board packet was to give you all of the background of the amendments that have been approved by the board previously, to show you some of the documents that have been amended, so in preparation for resolution and approval at our January meeting. And after that approval, we'll subsequently submit the document to the IRS for their final determination. And I'll entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Angie. Any questions of Angie?
I have one.
John?
The members of this organization, this group, are they eligible for Social Security?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So, and what percentage do they contribute?
They contribute, I believe, is it 2%, 4%, Pat? They contribute 4%.
How unique is that in the business? What's your knowledge of what's going on out there? Is that a front runner opportunity for?
That seems very fair and comparable to what we have seen. One of the things that happened in our last negotiation period, from a contribution level of the organization, we had been contributing 2% as an employer contribution to the employees. What we did see when we went back and did our benchmark study, and also looking at other comparable plans during negotiation, that was up to a 4% contribution on the employer's behalf. So what we're seeing, in the market, we're seeing anything from 4% up to 6%. A lot of the plans, however, are set up where if there is no contribution from the employee, then there's no employer match. And then we have seen where there's contributions from the employer, and then there's a subsequent scale based upon your contribution. So we've seen from one extreme to the other, but nothing as lucrative as the defined benefit plan that we have under our current pension plan.
And you told me earlier today that the personnel that are entering that workforce like that concept, or are accustomed to it, or don't know about anything else. Just give the group a sense of that.
And I hate to always term them as millennials, but because I'm a parent of 3 of those, I think I'm justified in saying that. Our millennials and a lot of our workers who are entering the workforce, they are coming from organizations where they're more accustomed to a lot more flexible and portable type of retirement arrangements, such as 401ks, 403bs, and those types of retirement vehicles where they are portable. And one of the things that happens with that, they feel more in control, of their funds. Also, from an allocation standpoint, there's a little more flexibility of where those funds are invested, as opposed to a defined benefit plan where it's basically you put your money in and that's all decided for you. So we're seeing, as employees are coming into the organization, for those of them who may not necessarily enroll at that moment, there's a lot more questioning as why is there a defined benefit plan that is not portable and I'm tied to it once I'm entering the organization.
So the portability is good for the employee and bad for the employer.
Yes,
Yeah.
because one of the things that often happens when there is that, what we call the handcuffs, you may have employees who are sticking around just for the pension
Right.
per se, and they become very disengaged at work.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Andy. Very, very good. D3, bi-monthly finance presentation, Melissa Dykes. Hello, Melissa.
Good afternoon.
Please proceed.
This is our monthly review that's provided as part of the board package each month, is reviewed with the board every other month, alternating with the operations report every other month. Beginning on the first page of the report, I'll caveat these projections by saying we're talking about the first 2 months of the year, which generally tend to be mild weather months. They're shoulder months, and so it's hard to get a really good picture for the forecast for the year this early in the year. But this is our best guess based on what's happened in the first 2 months of the year. From a debt service coverage perspective, we're projecting 2.3 times in the electric system, which is consistent with board metrics, or metrics laid out in board policies. I will put an asterisk next to the days of liquidity and days of cash. These are pretty high numbers that are listed here as a projection for the year end, 331 and 214. Built into our projections, though, is no change in our fuel rate and no additional fuel credits. So we'll talk a little bit more in this presentation about where we are with the fuel rate and the fuel fund. But that's what's built into the projections currently, and that's what's driving those numbers to be quite a bit higher than where we ended the year last year. And projecting a year-end debt-to-asset ratio of 66%, so making very good progress toward a healthier balance sheet. In the water and sewer system, projecting 2.6 times debt service coverage, 273 days of liquidity, of which 156 are cash, and 53% debt-to-asset ratio at year-end. In terms of sales, the first 2 months of the year have actually been pretty interesting in the electric system. We started October down, driven by mild weather. The month of November was up 3% year over year, and that was driven by air conditioning load, which is very strange this time of year, but it's just been so warm through so much of the month that we did see that uptick driven by air conditioning load, which would lead to about a 0.5% growth year over year in terms of electric sales. What that translates to in the financial results is, from a revenues perspective, we're projecting revenues about $19 million under budget, and that's really driven by the fuel credit. The board approved a fuel credit about 3 months ago. That fuel credit was $56 million provided to customers in the month of October, and so that's really driving that difference in revenues because it does include that fuel credit. On a net basis, though, if you flip down to the bottom of the expense line, we're projecting net revenues about $27 million better than budget. And again, fuel's the common theme in the electric system right now. Again, that's driven by fuel. The fuel expense line in particular is far below budget. So I'll flag that as an item that we have, I believe, on the agenda to discuss with the Finance and Audit Committee in January as to what the next step should be with respect to the fuel rate and the fuel fund. Capital expenditures and debt service, both on track for this fiscal year, both tracking actually pretty close to budget for this fiscal year. If you look at the bottom left-hand side, we have the electric cost per megawatt hour target that we list there. That is last year's electric cost, non-fuel cost per megawatt hour. We are trending above that for the forecast period this year, so we're looking at either further expense reductions or we may get some relief on that metric if we get an uptick in sales. And again, it's quite early in the year to know where we're going to end up on that. The bottom right-hand side is the fuel fund, which will be up for discussion at the January Finance and Audit Committee. In the water and sewer system, you see that the similar trend in terms of decreased sales. Year over year, we are up 2% in water and sewer. We are watching this pretty closely. Last year was flagged as an anomalous sales year just driven by weather. We had a year-over-year increase in water sales of over 6%, which is a pretty big jump from one year to the next. Weather normalized, you would have expected that to drop off a little bit versus last year, but we're continuing to see that increase. So some of it's precipitation driven. We are a little bit below normal on both days of rain and inches of rain. But we are watching this metric closely. From a revenues and net revenues perspective, this will translate very well for the water and sewer system. but we're watching it in particular with respect to capital planning against our conceptive use permit. We continue to see those kinds of increases. From a financial perspective, total revenues, we're now trending over budget by about $2 million. Net revenues, we're trending below budget. That's really driven by an accounting change more than it is a real net revenue reduction versus budget. But it's one that we'll talk more with the Finance and Audit Committee about the best way to present for the best transparency in this metric. And for both water and sewer, we are a little bit above targets in terms of the cost per KGAL. But again, that'll merit either further expense reductions in both of those systems, or we may get some relief on that if we continue to see higher sales. Our overall debt picture is shown on these slides, and I love these pages or these charts side by side because it really shows the dramatic decrease in the debt that's on our balance sheet over the past 6 or 7 years. So we had a debt to asset ratio that peaked over 90% in the electric system, and we're now projecting a very healthy mid-60s by the end of this year in terms of debt to asset ratio. So continuing to make some very good progress on the health of the balance sheet. Total cost of our debt portfolio, we still have about $4.5 billion outstanding. Total average weighted cost across the whole system, across all three systems, is 3.83% against a budget of 4.3%. So good trend on interest rates there.
Can you back up one slide for me, please?
Sure.
Where's the peer ratio?
That's
the solid green line on the bottom.
It is, yeah. You see the peer medians there. They're a little bit different between electric and water, but the electric peer median on here is about 53%, and water is a little over 50%.
How many utilities make up that peer group?
It's a different number for each of the systems. In the electric system, it's about 40 utilities, give or take, that carry a AA credit rating, and they're all municipally owned utilities in the United States. In the water and sewer system, I believe it's 50, but let me flag that for follow-up.
We're approaching it in water and sewer. We've still got a big gap in electric. Is that an aspirational rate for us, or just an informational item for us?
I would characterize it as aspirational. We have a pricing policy that's approved by the board that sets out target metrics for each of the systems. The target for the electric system is 60%, which is a little bit above the peer median that's on here, but we've still got a little margin there between where we are and that target rate. Part of the target is driven by the need to preserve our credit rating against a balance sheet that's got a lot of debt on it. Another reason for the development of that particular target, though, is to get our balance sheet in a much healthier position to give us flexibility to be able to respond to some of the very big transformative environmental regulations that are coming at us that could require us to issue debt in the future.
But to be clear, we have a target rate of 60. 53 would be nice, but we'll focus on getting to our 60.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, at 60%, we would then reevaluate with the Finance and Audit Committee and the board in terms of whether that's an appropriate target, and we maintain a capital program from there that includes the issuance of debt going forward, or whether we continue to look to reduce the debt on the balance sheet.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Good question.
No problem. No, go ahead.
Just to add one bit of background. In terms of the investor-owned, the larger part of the industry, when we look at the balance sheet, the capital structure is 50-50, 50 debt, 50 equity. And so it's sort of a broader measure than these 40. But
Flipping to this variable rate debt risk analysis page, this page was provided to the board really with a lot of focus beginning in 2008 with the disruption of the financial market. So it's a way for the board to track credit risk within the debt portfolio, both in terms of credit instruments and in terms of interest rate swaps. Fortunately, it's pretty boring right now. Our credit providers, yes, are pretty healthy. We don't have any major change-outs that are coming up. The next change-out that we have occurring, which will happen within the next week, is a change-out of our line of credit provider. We do have an open line of credit, which functions a little bit like a personal credit card. It's there to bolster our liquidity position. It's not one that we've used in the past, at least not in the past 4 years. We don't have any plans to use it in the future, with the exception of a very, very small technical borrowing requirement. The provider currently is the Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi, and that they're going to be replaced with JP Morgan Chase, which is a little upgrade in credit quality there for all $300 million of that. In terms of the investment portfolio, The investments are the dark side of low interest rates. The investments portfolio has a weighted average yield right now of 0.95%. Unfortunately, we are predicting an uptick in that, which should provide us with some greater investments income to help offset some of the costs on that front. And where we are in terms of the overall rates picture, we're just about the median in both systems for residential rates. We're just one spot above the median in terms of electric bills at 1,000 kilowatt hours, and about one spot below the median in terms of residential water bills. Any questions on the financial picture for last month? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, before we get into new business, I would like to recognize our friend, Councilman Bill Gulliver, and thank him for his attendance today. Nice to have you with us, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Petway. I apologize that we had a affordable housing meeting going on that held me there a little bit longer. Mr. Jones, we understand. It's good to see that Mr. Jones is able to slide past the confirmation process in council.
I squeaked by. Thank you.
If I may make one quick comment, I want to recognize the fact that the chairman was kind enough to attend our interlocal agreement committee meeting, the last one, which has been going on now for some time, and I think we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we'll see resolution in short order, and it's been a good process, and I'm glad we anticipated and started well in advance. I think it was healthy for the process. The other thing I want you all to recognize is that we have a joint issue that has impact on the community that was discussed at that meeting. The chairman's aware of it. Is not only the replacement of septic tanks, but the continuing proliferation of septic tanks. It's going to take all of us to get engaged in that. I don't think we can keep burying our head in the sand on it because it continues to grow. So at some point in the future, I would hope that maybe the Finance Committee and the board could get together after we get past the resolution of the interlocal agreement, could get together and maybe talk about that as to how we progress with it. Because, as I said, it's a significant community issue and it needs resolution. At least it needs effort towards resolution.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your leadership on all those important issues, items. New business. I have a couple of items of new business to share with you. Our CEO is going to, in his report, touch on some of the things that Councilman Gulliford's talking about. We've had a busy month since we saw you last, and he's also going to talk about the New York trip as well. But our comp committee that I appointed last board meeting, chaired by Dolores Kessler, met an hour prior to this meeting today and is well underway. Dolores, you have a few comments on the report to the board?
Yes, just to say that we understand the charge, that we're getting our arms around everything with regard to comp from JEA from the bottom up. I'd like to say that Angie and her department has done a very good job of supplying us with more information than we can ever comprehend, but we're going through it and understanding the whole, which is very complex. As you know, there's 6 bargaining units here. It's much more complex than I realized before I came on board. But we also are aware of our charge. We have to have some leftover business from last year as far as clearing up some items with regard to the bonus and incentives, and we are prepared to have that done by the end of January. We have a next meeting already set, and I must say I've got a great committee, Mr. Petway and Ms. Flanagan. So some good reports, and thank you again, Angie.
We had a good meeting today, as I said, with Paul, and we reviewed a big package, and we're starting to prioritize the things that really need to be looked at right away, so that we'll have that probably a monthly update as we go forward.
We will.
The other committee item is I'm going to appoint a chairman of Finance and Audit today, and kind of review the committee process as we have it here now, and it was, we discussed a little bit at the last meeting. We're going to have two standing committees, one the compensation and one finance and audit, and the other committees that are necessary or on an as-needed basis. I like to have the board serve as a committee in the whole, rather than try to figure out exactly what we need to be having in the way of committees other than those two, which we know we need. We'll just go forward and deal with the committee requirements as a board committee as a whole. But today I want to announce that I'm announcing Kelly Flanagan as chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. And what I'd like to do is not what I did last month and appoint members to that committee. I'd like for you each to think about your interest or not in serving on that committee, and let's get some people that own that committee to serve with Kelly that are interested and qualified to participate. So, if you don't mind talking to Paul about that, we'll announce the committee as soon as we can. Any questions or comments on those items? Congratulations, Ms. Flanagan. I'd like to ask our Managing Director and CEO for his report, his exciting report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it has been exciting. It's 12 days. It's not even the week.
Since the last
very busy.
That's right.
I have three things I'd like to share with you. A little update on the rating agency review meetings we had last week. A conversation about contribution, and sort of the last Tuesday we met with the council committee, and then just give an overview of some changes with respect to the governing body for labor union agreements, and it was an opinion issued by the general counsel last week as well. So the rating agency meetings went very well in New York. They hit their objectives. Our objective was primarily to review the financial results for 2015. Melissa's team did an expert job in picking up the audited financials. Melissa was in a taxi at 7 a.m. the morning of the meeting to go across town to get the financials hot off the press and deliver them to our first meeting. Incorporated the change to regulatory accounting as well as the pension, new pronouncements on a pension, so it was a difficult close, but we did achieve the objective and kept, I don't know, I think it's 25 years running where we've been able to produce financials within a 60-day period and deliver them to the street, which is far better than many, many other utilities. And really, in this case, we were the first to market, so great job. We also talked about our plans go forward and some projections and strategies on how we plan to deal with some of the challenges ahead of us, both in terms of the Clean Power Plan, in terms of sales, distributed generation, and on the water and sewer side, in terms of water supply and water effluent and discharge into the rivers. And I think that they were well received in terms of our thoughts. We answered the big questions, and it was terrific, and I should take this time to thank Chair Pelley, who led a wonderful set of meetings. I want to publicly thank him, and we should all thank him. And Dr. Gaffney pointed out the mayor's involvement. And I can honestly say that having the mayor there, we knew the reasoning behind some of the changes, but to have the person who made the decision maker in the room with the analyst and convey his thoughts was very powerful and allowed to a direct and communication that was heard by the street, heard by the analyst, and accepted by the analyst in terms of some of the changes to the board and other things that the mayor is undertaking. We talked about the contribution, and that was well received. Councilman President Anderson did a wonderful job in explaining that to each one of the agencies, and that was well received. And the mayor teed up and cleared off a little bit of the concern that we had last year, in the last several years, in terms of looking at JEA as a piece of the puzzle to solve the underfunded police and fire pension fund. And clearly, as he has stated publicly here, we will not be part of that solution on the financial side, and that was well received too. So I think all in all, it was a set of meetings. All three went well. In thinking about the meetings and downloading with the team, we asked ourselves a question. Did we not say something we wanted to say? And the answer was no. We said everything we set out to. Was there anything that we were unprepared for in terms of responding to questions? And the answer to that was no. I think we were prepared to respond to any question that we brought forward. I think we communicated all of the thoughts and processes and facts and a degree of confidence. Next steps will be, we do not have a deal in the marketplace teed up over the next number of months, so I estimate that we'll probably have something in the latter part of the first quarter, just as a standard report that they may issue on our credit each individually. And when we do that, we'll bring that to the board, and we made the commitment to bring that to the council committee as well in terms of once the next reports are issued by the individual agencies. So it was good meeting, and I want to flip to contribution. And really the conversation that we had with the committee, Mr. Chairman Gulliford's committee on the JEA contribution.
Thank you.
As the Chair Gulliford pointed out, we've been meeting with a number of months, and we had a good meeting on Tuesday that I think we tried to address all the major points and had some good dialogue on the major points. The first one was ultimately the amount of contribution, how much each year JEA ratepayers contributes to the city owner of Jacksonville in the form of, we call it contribution, can be dividend, can be return, payment in lieu of taxes, all of the above, but that one component. We have on the second page shows an illustration of what we proposed, and over the last number of years, the agreement has called for a $2.5 million automatic increase, and it grew to $114 million. We have proposed 114 as the starting point, and then for the floor to move forward at 1% increase per year through the 5-year agreement. And so that in the event that and the calculation underlying this will be millage-based, which is what we have today. So it's millage times unit sales in each one of the 3 systems computes to a contribution, a dollar amount that we would transfer to the city. If that calculation produces a number below the floor, we pay the floor. If that calculation produces a number above the floor, we pay the higher amount. But it always comes back to the floor the next year. So it's just somewhat of a sawtooth illustration of the payment over the 5 years. We think this the 5-year payment with this 1% increase and then the extra value contributed to the city should we have a high sales year is fair and reasonable. Having it at 5 years puts us in the bullseye in terms of where we really need to start spending some big money to comply with the Clean Power Plan and carbon and retooling our generation fleet, as well as giving us another couple, 3-4 years to really understand distributed generation. So I think it's a good point between the 2 teams talking about this over the last number of months, and move forward on this as the big number in the room. Secondarily, and Chairman Gulliver pointed this out, sewer line expansion, septic tank, the treatment of wastewater outside of the centralized city system is an issue for the community, and we have struggled with this for any number of years. Some can say 10, 15, 20 years. It probably goes back to 30 or 40. And as a community, we need to do something about it. We talked long and hard about how we might do that. There have been a number of entities and structures put in place in the past. None of them have been successful to date. And so between us, we came up with a view that if JEA were to have a one-time additional contribution as sort of a closing fee, if you will, to get this deal moved forward of $15 million, the city would direct those funds into an account that would be used for sewer line expansion and septic tank phase-out. The city would match that amount over at $3 million a year for 5 years, or an additional $15 million total in all. The activity and the investment would continue to be governed by an interlocal agreement that we have between the city and JEA in terms of these types of projects, and sort of the definition of the project, identification, definition, design, engineering, and construction. And this would be capital seed money to get some of those projects going. The idea of putting the $15 million up front was attractive to have enough capital to get projects going. What we felt was that even if we put our $3 million each in a pool at $6 million, we would be capital constrained to really get projects of any meaningful level started. The final intent here is for both of us now to say that the city and JEA have demonstrated at least a commitment to put capital at risk to grow and expand our system and take care of the environmental aspects of wastewater not treated in the centralized system, and then look for other sourcing, whether it's the Water Management District, Tallahassee, and even the federal government for some type of match funding or additional grants to continue to grow this pool. So we think that adds value to the community and really addresses an issue that we've been talking about far too long and need to take some action. I think the final point on that is that, as Chairman Gulliford pointed out, the council will undertake a serious consideration of really looking at this issue of closing some of the loopholes with respect to connecting to the system, requiring connection to the system if it's available, and to stop sort of the expansion of septic tanks when centralized lines are available.
It would be wise, Paul, to make them aware that we're considering, we looked at Sarasota County, for instance, they charge, I don't know the exact terminology, but you can call it an availability fee. If I run my line in front of your house, you have the option not to hook up, but you're going to start paying me an availability fee each month that is both on water and sewer. The idea would be that funding would go into some kind of restricted fund to continue the effort to expand the coverage, obviously. But it's a pretty unique idea, and I think one we're going to aggressively and actively pursue, maybe with legislation.
Yeah, because one of the problems you have is that we extend the line
40%,
but there's no requirement that the city invariably waives that requirement that they tie in. So we reduce the revenue that's coming to JEA, and unless the council is willing to make some changes like that, the $15 million is not really going to help the JEA, because they may run the line, but unless my tank is failing, I'm not going to tie in. I'm not going to pay them every month. So it's we need to address that on the council side.
That would go some way to fixing it.
Is that in addition to a user fee, or?
No, this is only for those who elect not to hook up. They would start paying a monthly fee that would basically be an availability fee. You enter one house and you've hooked up and you're paying a monthly fee. Ed's in the house next door, he doesn't have to hook up or opts not to hook up. He's going to start paying a monthly fee too. That's assessed as an availability fee. We are giving you access to it, your option not to hook it up. I don't think the fees are the same dollar amount, but at least it starts a revenue potential for that, restricted for that purpose.
We engaged in that practice in the Ponte Vedra MSA septic. There was 700 or so septic tanks. We did the work collaboratively with St. Johns County, and once the system was put in, within 12 months, the resident was required to connect, and if they didn't, then they paid an ongoing service availability fee, and that was the incentive of making the connection. We would pay for it anyway. So
does that move people? Does that make people stop and think?
Yeah, it makes them stop and think. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a path to...
It's a path to incent conversion. Yep. Yes, it is.
That's cool. Yeah. I haven't heard that.
It's novel. It's good.
To the chair, can that be retroactive? I mean, houses that currently sit on that unused sewer line, can you pass legislation to make it retroactive? Do they have to start paying, or is it just prospective houses that it's extended to in the future that will be subject to that?
Fortunately, I brought the general counsel with me.
I don't like to shoot from the hip, the chair, Jason Gabriel, general counsel, but I don't think so, but that's something I'd have to confirm before we answered that.
So it's a long time for that becomes a meaningful revenue stream.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Jason. State law requires a resident to tie in within 1 year. when a new line is.
That's
But the council waives that requirement invariably. So, since the council has taken that action to waive it, is that a permanent action?
It depends on how they've structured. I'd have to look to see how they waive it,
Yeah.
from time to time.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do a temporary waiver, or they could do it
Yeah.
conceivably in a
Because
prolonged
in
duration.
every case, the council voted to waive that tie-in requirement. But if we rescinded that, then we could subject them to the availability fee.
You can tell he's not an elected official anymore.
I'm wearing a different hat now.
Good point.
It's been 6 months now.
How soon they forget, right?
Chairman, maybe off the reservation a little bit, but maybe there's a new 12-month, 1-year phase-in period you could look at to give someone a chance to tie in or then be assessed.
Then be assessed,
Yeah, that's good.
I'll just wrap up. There were 2 more points on this. One was JEA undertook a massive project back around 2000, 2002 to reduce the nitrogen in its effluent to the river, and was very successful. Invested almost $400 million over that period of time. And we have reduced nitrogen to a level well below our permit. So we've got a surplus in terms of tons. And part of the agreement is to share 33 tons with the city out to 2023. And 2023 is an optimal year because that's when the permits open back up. And at that point in time, we think we'll have significant surplus again, both for ourselves and the city. But we've got some investment to make between now and then. But we'll carry that surplus and allocate that surplus to the city as part of this agreement. And then the final point, which is which is still open, and that is the city's desire to have JEA hold it harmless from any increase in rates and charges through the duration of the agreement. And we looked at a number of ways to accomplish that and have not found a good solution at this point in time. So, part of that is if we were to raise rates, then the contribution would go up to offset that. And that is sort of a cross-subsidy, it's preferential treatment, et cetera, and it violates directly the bond resolution. So we continue to talk about if there is a structure there for that. Maybe there's a netting process, or maybe that's just the one that we can't do at this point in time now that we've cleaned up all the other issues. And then finally, OGC, Mr. Gabriel had issued an opinion at our Tuesday meeting that for the last number of years, 3-4 years, because one of the unions filed an unfair labor practice against the council, the city, and JEA with regard to who was the governing body, the authorizing body for JEA labor union contracts. At the time, it was the city, and they thought it was unfair labor practice, and the read of the law and the read of the law of the general counsel at the time directed the authorization to the JEA Board as part of the settlement of this unfair labor practice and a read of the law at the time. And so for the last 3 or 4 years, the JEA Board has been the governing body for labor union agreements. And thus, any labor union dispute or agreement comes to the board, it's voted on, approved, or not approved, adjudicated in terms of grievances, and that's the final stop. This opinion pushes us back into the pre-2011 timeframe when the council was, in fact, the final stop for agreements. And so I just want to make everybody aware that we're going to think about and look at how that works practically in terms of the process at this point in time, and we'll keep you updated as we go forward. And that concludes my report. Other than this is the December meeting, Mr. Chairman, and I want to take a moment to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, Happy, Healthy New Year, and certainly the Happy, Healthy New Year part of it. Stay safe. The holiday season is an important time to celebrate and be with family. Thanks for the contribution this year, and thank you to the board for your contribution of your time and talent and treasure. The check's in the mail.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions, comments? I have a few comments. Needless to say, I had never been to New York with the JEA, and I guess I really didn't know what to expect. But it reminded me of when I was in school. One of the things I didn't like was having my paper graded. Remember how you got your paper graded? Well, I'm here to tell you, we're having our paper graded just about every day from what I can figure out. These three bonding agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, know more about what we're doing here than anybody else on the face of the planet. As a matter of fact, I'm sure all of you saw the editorial that we had the day after our last meeting from the local Florida Times Union. If you didn't, you need to read this. This is really a nice editorial that we got for having a good meeting and, dealing with what we're supposed to deal with. Well, they were glad to see this because they didn't know what was going on down here other than what they might have been reading in the newspaper. They don't get reports other than the financials that they see. We spent 3 hours with each one of the groups over a 2-day or day and a half period. And I would have to say it was more like an inquisition than it was a meeting. They sat across the table from us. One group had 8, one group had 4, and the other group had 4, I think. And they are all experts and have been experts for some of them 20 years, 25 years. Paul had his 4 key executives with him, and Paul and his people did an outstanding job in specifics by water and sewer and by electric and by operations and whatever area of expertise the executives with us had. We put a presentation on for each one of our business units. And I'd say at the end of the day, with the leadership of Mayor Curry, if you see Mayor Curry or President Anderson, you need to thank them because they took time out of their busy schedule. And there's no fun and games associated with this thing. This is all business, and it's a difficult pressure cook kind of environment because the answers are important. What they hear is what they're going to remember, and they're taking copious notes. It's been a long time since I saw people take notes like they took notes. Analysts, I guess, is a good excuse to take notes. I would say they could have a lot of information to review, and we left a lot of information. But I was very, very proud, and I'm proud of everybody associated with JEA that makes up what we do every day around here. And you as a board should be proud. They're expecting big things out of us. We've been reading the newspaper. They know that we're coming in with a completely new board. They wanted to know all about that. Had the mayor explain that to them in excruciating detail. They wanted to know all the background, all the current facts, all the current situation to the extent of when he was going. In the presentation, we didn't have Alan Howard in the blank. It was a blank. They asked him when he was going to appoint that person, and he said, "Well, you must know. Nobody else knows. And I'm going to tell you, I've already appointed that person. We got to get him through city council." And he told him about Alan Howard. I mean, it's amazing what y'all went through and what we went through. So, again, I add my congratulations to our team, and I'm pulling for improved ratings. We'll see how it works out. The only other item of note before I ask Jason and Councilman Goldford if they have any closing comments is Alan Howard. I wanted you to know that Alan Howard has accepted the mayor's request to serve on our board. His paperwork's being worked up now. He's going to be coming through the council committee, our rules committee in the council, Mr. Goldford, and hopefully he'll be with us at probably our February meeting. I don't think there's going to be any kind of emergency request or anything. So I know Alan Howard will be a great addition to our board, and I think if you don't know him, you're going to enjoy working with him. He's a very successful local attorney. Had a lot to do with MOCA, turning around the last 10 years. Quite an interested civic-minded person. Paul, we got anything else? We got anything that
I need probably another, just 5 minutes after we break, Mr. Chairman, for signatures.
Okay.
We're going to have an autograph party on a couple of bond authorizations. So that's I think we need almost everyone.
Well, before I adjourn, let me ask our general counsel if he has any comments for us, anything you'd like to add to the day?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to add. I'm available for any questions. I know that opinion that Paul referenced earlier, there may be some questions there offline or here or next meeting, whatever. I'm just available, to answer any questions or clarify anything on that, but I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate your support. Thank you. Councilman?
No, I'm just glad publicly that everybody got to witness Mr. Jones turning so fast. Forgetting so quickly.
Now, for that.
It's Christmas, Mr. Goff.
I already got the card from him.
Well, let me add my well wishes for Merry Christmas to everyone and happy holidays. And we'll look forward to January's, what's the date? Third Tuesday, what's the name?
Third Tuesday.
Somebody got that? Get it on the record here? I'll get it.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for chairing this meeting on your birthday.
Your birthday? 39, right?
39.
39 and old. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Good Sagittarius.
Had we known, we would have cake and
I'm
dancing
glad,
girls and all that.
I'm glad we didn't have to do that. Sound like that, adjourn the meeting, right?